Today's powerful conversation is from last year's virtual Thermostat Cultures live event that I host, and this conversation took place in the midst of the pandemic and all the challenges we were facing in the world. I hope you enjoy this look back at the conversation about authentic leadership and what is needed in the world. I was joined by my friends Howard Behar, former president of Starbucks, Doug Ulman, CEO of Pelotonia, and Lachandra Baker, Senior Director for Employee Engagement at Cover My Meds. Enjoy this conversation that is the currency for change, and learn more about this year's Thermostat Cultures live event on Friday, October 29th, 2021 at thermostatcultureslive.com. thermostatcultureslive.com.
Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced. The best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world.
I'm excited in just a second to invite up onto the virtual stage some wonderful people. Howard Behar, who, you know, people out there in the world know Howard Behar as the former president of Starbucks. Howard's story is, you know, he started with Starbucks when nobody knew, much about Starbucks outside of Seattle, when they had about 20 stores. And then he and his team famously grew them to over 15,000 stores around the globe, where all of a sudden Starbucks were everywhere. And he and his team were about, how do we help be able to grow the type of culture and leaders? And if anybody that knows Howard knows that servant leadership and keeping people at the heart of everything they do certainly has been a part of his life. And I'll say personally, he's been one of the most important people in my life, and a mentor, an amazing friend over the years, and a Thermostat Cultures live legend. So Howard is joining the screen. I'm also excited to invite up onto stage with me here in studio Lachandra Baker, who Law, as I affectionately call her, and many do, Law is the senior manager for employee engagement at Cover My Meds, amazing company with a powerful mission of helping to get medications to people in need. Anybody who knows Law also knows about her presence and the care and her laugh. And she's just an amazing person, somebody I've been so lucky to become friends with. She's here in studio with me. So we've been socially distancing, but welcome Law to the screen. She's going to sit down with me. And then lastly, I'm going to invite up just for this conversation, last but not least, Doug Ulman. Doug is president and CEO of Pelotonia. Anybody that knows Pelotonia knows the amazing millions and millions of dollars that they have raised for cancer research. He's a cancer survivor, an advocate for cancer research, a community champion, and somebody that every time that I get to talk with, I leave just feeling like he's just a caring a friend and person that I admire talking to. So Howard, Law, Doug, welcome to Thermostat Cultures Live.
Thank you. Excited to see everybody. Hey, Howard. Hey, Doug.
How are you?
How we doing?
We're alive. I'm here in Palm Springs, and it's going to be 85 here today. Beautiful.
So we're all coming over after? Is that what you said? I thought you said that.
I've been to that. I've been to your Palm Springs place, and that pool is pretty enticing. So I wish we could all virtually just jump in right now. That'd be pretty cool. Hey, let me ask this question. I want to start out. We've been talking about the fact that 2020 has been a year that none of us have ever lived through. A global pandemic, economic uncertainty, political uncertainty, civil unrest, issues of social justice and racism. where am I going to school my kids? Are they online? Are they, all of these things that are swirling. I'm interested, that question that I asked to everybody earlier, why authentic leadership is important to you right now, and why this idea of shaping culture on teams and organizations, what are the attributes, what comes to your mind as most important about authentic leadership and culture in the world today?
To me, it's number one, it's being authentic, first of all, being vulnerable, second of all, and communicate. If there was ever a time that you need to communicate, this is it. I say to the people at Starbucks now that are struggling a little bit, I say, if you thought that communication needed to be at a level 5, double or triple it to a level 10 or a level 15, because that's what it's taking right now. We need to it's not, when I say communicate, I don't mean talk, I mean listen. And so, that's what it's taking right now. And I find that if I don't, if I stay in my own little hole, that I start to get stressed out and start to get concerned.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think part of it too, I remember growing up, we always talked about the golden rule was treat other people like you want to be treated. And I think more about the platinum rule that people talk about now, treat people how they want to be treated. So a lot of what Howard's talking about is you have to be a good listener for that. You got to really listen to what people need. You have to think about what need can you reach for them, and what do you need to resource out, right? How do you connect them to the support they need in whatever way is possible? So you just got to really be a great listener and really understand what people need.
Yeah. Doug, what are your thoughts on this? In the world we're in right now, authentic leadership, culture, what comes to your mind?
Well, I agree with Howard and Law for sure. And I think when Howard was talking about communication, a pandemic, stress, crisis will only other things that are struggling within your culture, right? So if you're having trouble communicating, it's only going to get worse under the microscope of stress. I think for me, it's humility. None of us have all the answers. And no matter what organization or what group or what team you're leading, none of us have all of the solutions or all the answers, especially in the rapidly changing environment in which we're all living. Now, none of us could have predicted all of this happening at once. But again, it just has put the microscope on all of our behaviors and all of our cultural flaws in some ways that need to be examined and changed.
Yeah, no doubt.
One other thing is the idea of vulnerability to me means that you're okay with your fears.
Yeah.
You're okay to express that you're struggling with it too with your people.
Yeah.
This is not a time for leadership to hide or to say, hey, don't worry, always don't worry, because people are going to worry no matter what. And it's okay for you to say, hey, I'm worried too. And, but we're going to figure this out together. And then listen to your people. The people on the front lines, really know what to do. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to them, they will tell you the steps you need to take, and you just need to follow them, and they'll take you where you need to go. This is a time where leadership isn't being out front. Leadership is being behind the group.
Love it.
I love it. So, by the way, everybody who's listening out there, I hope that in the chat box, I see a number of comments coming in, great things that already people are saying about these wonderful voices that are joining me. So feel free to stay interactive and capture the things that are jumping out to you, but also feel free to send in any questions that you might have. We've got people behind the scenes right now that are tracking those questions. And if ones come up that are good, we're gonna make sure that we bring those to the stage. This idea of servant leadership. Because I believe that what you were just saying, Howard, this idea that what's needed right now is our willingness to almost lead from behind, but also it means that we need to serve something that's bigger than us. And we need to realize that it's not about us as the leader, of course, but it is about mobilizing people. And I know, Doug, your whole organization is about mobilizing people around a mission that's greater than us. What is this concept of servant leadership? And if we know that leadership is in these times of crisis, what does it look like to be a servant leader? What are the actions or attributes that we could show people?
Well, I think Howard struck a great chord just in terms of vulnerability. I mean, I think that is so critical. I think empathy is also very important at this moment. And as you said, Jason, our mission is all about bringing people together to do something that none of us could do on our own. And I think the other piece of servant leadership is realizing that no matter what organization or company you're working in or leading or running, we all are operating within a much bigger universe. And right now, we all are facing challenges that don't just affect us in our job or our organization, but they affect the community and the world at large. And part of servant leadership is understanding how we fit into that broader landscape and what we can do that goes way beyond the mission of our own organization or workforce.
No doubt.
So true. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I love that you said that, Doug, because if you think about, sometimes it's not just about how something affects you, it's how something affects the people around you. And with empathy, you care about that as much as you care about what happens to yourself. And so really having that lens of how do I make sure I can include people whose voices are not being heard? How can I help people who may not know where to go for resources and support? And how do I advocate and be an ally to them? And that's a huge part of leadership and changing culture right now, is just how do you stand up and use what you have available to you to help as many others as you can.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with both of you. There's, this idea of servant leadership. It's really, we think of it in terms of our organizations, companies, whatever it happens to be, but it starts at home. And it starts with serving yourself first and then serving your family. And there's only one reason any of us are put on this earth, and that's to serve others. And at this time of crisis, it is really important. We got to constantly be focused on what does that mean? How do I serve you in the way that you want to be served? And keep reinforcing that message with your people. It's not only internally, but if you're running an organization and you're serving, in our case, those human beings we call customers, right? How do we serve them? What are their needs? Is it just a hot cup of coffee and a warm welcome, or is it something more than that? And that is just, we got to all be aware of that. And there's so much conflict right now. I mean, I think about my own family. I'm having trouble serving somebody in my family because we're at a really huge disagreement, right, about the world in which we live right now. And trying to move through that has been really difficult. And we've been struggling with it, and that's going on in our organizations right now.
So I want to pick up on that, Howard, because again, as leaders, this is the space that we're in. And so I can't control everything that's happening around me. But if I have clarity around the temperature, at least that I'm trying to set, then that allows me to enter into that space and it requires me to have courage to then step into that space and to connect and to try to engage with people that might see things differently or have a different feeling from us. So I'm interested in what are tangible things that you're doing as a leader to help kind of breathe oxygen into yourself so that you're able to even have, what are tangible things we can be doing for those people in our organizations, in our families, or our neighbors, or people that we run into that may think differently. I want Thermostat Cultures Live. I've always wanted this to be, I want this to be a space that models how do we have civil, respectful, and be able to have conversations that are the currency for change, even if we might have different views on things. What are tangible things that come to mind for you?
Just for me personally. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Howard.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Law.
I was going to say, for me personally, I think you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable first, and know that it's going to be painful, and it's also going to take time. It's not like you can just snap your fingers and everything is perfect and everybody's happy and it's utopia. This is hard, and it's going to be hard, but are you willing to work through it with me? And you have to have that willingness to work together in that space. And you come with an open heart, open mind, and say, I care about you as a person. And you say you care about me as a person. So let's find something that we can find that is a common ground that we can at least stand there and start building a foundation from. And just know it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick.
Yeah, I love it. Doug, Howard, what do you think?
Well, I agree with that. That's perfect. Understanding you're going to be uncomfortable. and really uncomfortable. Not just sitting around in your chair, but I mean where your whole being, all your emotions, everything that you may value or believe that you value in life may be in conflict with somebody else. That's where I have found myself, and it has been really, I have to admit, it's been extremely difficult. And that the only thing I have found is that this constant communication, even when we're disagreeing, even when we're sending little darts sometimes, right, is don't let the conversation stop. Is just keep going with it. But I think these are the most difficult times. I'm 76 years old, and without a doubt, this is the most difficult time that I've ever gone through, including all the sicknesses I've had, because this feels like there's almost a threat to my whole being. And coming to grips with that has been hard.
Yes.
I agree. And I would just add, and Howard mentioned this earlier, and I think it's worth sort of emphasizing, but this idea that we have to take care of ourselves, because when you come to those conversations, you have to come from a place of wellness. And it's hard under stress. It's hard in a crisis. It's hard in a pandemic. And it also feels somewhat selfish to make the time and space to take care of yourself, but you can't lead and you can't come to those authentic conversations from a healthy place if you don't focus on that. And then just making the time and listening, I think is so critical. I mean, as an eternal optimist, I will say that the pandemic has provided, for me at least, a lot more time to think and reflect, and to have the time to process some of these hard conversations. I've teared up and cried on more Zoom calls in the last 6 months than I can remember in my lifetime, and that's not a bad thing, because I've been moved emotionally by what I've heard and what I've learned from so many people that I care about in our organization and beyond.
I love it. Well, and to piggyback off that, Doug, we're talking about this idea of over communicating, right? Howard, you said that a minute ago. And how do we then take care of ourselves? I use the language, how do we breathe oxygen into ourselves? And so that we're even able to then breathe oxygen and give life to others. I know in a global pandemic, this breathing oxygen thing sometimes feels weird because we're not supposed to put particles towards each other or whatever. But go with the metaphor of this idea of I have to be well and healthy, to your point, Doug, so that I'm able to serve and to give life and oxygen and listen, and to even be able to enter into those conversations that may take courage in order to have. So I'm interested in a time and space where we've been asking people to remotely work. We've been asking people to quarantine, to be isolated, and also to be almost divided, and yet also at a time where people already are feeling divided. What are tangible things that you've seen organizations do, or what are you feeling like you have to do with people in order to keep them engaged, their mind and heart?
Yeah. Well, for us personally, we keep going back to our mission. We're in healthcare, and our mission is to help patients get the medication they need to live healthy lives. So we think about that. And in a global pandemic, that's even more important than ever to be able to do that. And so we come back to that. That centers us. That's our center, is that with all the things going on with us, if we can get one person their medication today that changes their entire trajectory of their lives, then that is a reason for waking up every single day. And so we really try to ground people back to that mission and let them know how important it is, and that they are hopefully the happy ending to a story that needs to be told. And so that's what we always hope that people are feeling every day, and that helps them get through. And then we just, as an organization, figure out what they need for support, and we try to be there for them.
Love it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, for Starbucks, it's basically our BHAG is to nurture and inspire the human spirit. So in these times, that comes in many forms. And, at Starbucks, they're giving more than they've ever given to their people in terms of emotional support, in terms of financial support, and constant reinforcement that we're going to be okay, and good listening skills. And it is ongoing. If you do it once, you got to do it twice, you got to do it 3 times. You can never stop with the message. You're going to get bored with that message that I care about you, and showing that you care. You can't just say you care. You have to show that you care, and there's a price sometimes that goes with that. It's not for free. Sometimes it's emotional caring, sometimes it's economic caring, sometimes it's whatever the caring that needs to be with that person or the group of people. You have to show it, and it has to be real. And that helps to settle people down because, when somebody can come up and however they're going to put their arm around you and say, I'm here with you. I'm here with you. What do you need? What do you need from me? And then to have somebody help them, that is key right now.
That is. That's so great, Howard.
Amen, buddy. Doug, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
As an organization, we focus so much on what we call stewardship, right? How do you thank and show gratitude and appreciation to the hundreds of thousands of people who make our mission possible? And one of the things we like to talk a lot about internally is surprise and delight. How do you surprise people? Whether it's a note, whether it's a gift, whether it's a phone call. And I think right now, given the isolation and the distance, that surprise and delight is so critical, not just for our internal teams, but for our partners and people in the community. And, there's so many parallels, and I hesitate a little bit to make this correlation, but as a cancer survivor and as somebody who works in this field, our organization, sees a lot of similarities to the survivorship journey. For many people say, cancer may leave your body, but it never leaves your life, right? And we're going to make it through this period of unrest, this pandemic, but it's not going to leave us. We're going to remember it, and it's going to be a part of who we are going forward. And that's important to know that it's not going to go back to being the same. It's not going to go back to the way it was. That's okay as long as we listen and learn and move forward in a productive way.
That's right.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing you all say is that it's intentional. Mm-hmm. That we as leaders, if when those of you, many of the organizations or teams or leaders that are participating in today are going to smile as I say this because they know I've said this directly to them many different times over the last few months. But what I observed with a lot of leadership teams, especially right as March began and COVID and everything started to happen, and it felt like the world was just changing right around us moment by moment every single day, that in many people, some of the posture that leaders were taking was, well, we're on a sprint to just get through this. And many people in their minds, by the time we got to about July, I could see that they were tired and that they were worn out. And they were also in their minds mentally, they thought, why aren't we thought we'd be past this by now. Mm-hmm. And they realized we're not running a sprint, we're actually running a marathon. And so we have to then be intentional to say, what is the pace at which we're running? How are we breathing oxygen into ourselves? And then what I hear you guys saying is, how are we intentional with our team? And to Howard's point, over and over again, which I know many of the people on this call are going to smile as I say this, I always talk about rinsing and repeating. Mm-hmm. Just because we've talked about it once doesn't mean we're going to, our culture, we got to always return to it. Yeah. And then I'm hearing you say, make time to have those conversations that are the currency for change. Is that what I'm hearing?
100%.
Absolutely. That's it.
Yep.
A question that's coming in, and by the way, I see questions coming in the chat box. If you've got one that you want, and oops, it just popped away for me, that are coming up. It was to the nature of it was, what approach do you take, or what would you suggest on how to have those conversations that are the currency for change? I've got my own thoughts on this, but the question was, we know there's a lot to talk about. But that's all. Oftentimes, those are hard conversations to lean into and to have. What approach do you take to when there is a conversation that's needed to be had with your people?
Hey, everyone. I'm excited to share with you that Thermostat Cultures Live, the event, is coming back Friday, October 29th, 2021. As many of you know, this event that I've hosted over the last 5 years has been an inspiring day of development focused on authentic leadership and creating compelling cultures. I've been joined by powerful voices like Howard Behar, former president of Starbucks, Shane Battier, two-time NBA champion, Jenny Britton, founder of Jenny's Ice Cream, Jessica Jackley, co-founder of Kiva, Cameron Mitchell from Cameron Mitchell Restaurants, Greg Oden, former NBA #1 draft pick, and on and on and on. This year, Thermostat Cultures Live is going to be a hybrid event. There's going to be a powerful VIP in-person experience with limited seating in Columbus, Ohio, and a virtual experience for those wanting to participate remotely. So please visit thermostatcultureslive.com, thermostatcultureslive.com, or jasonvbarger.com to learn more, and I hope you'll consider joining this as an individual or as an entire team. I hope you'll help share the word and join these conversations that are the currency for change.
That I have a quote on my office wall that has kind of driven my life for the past, well, certainly 45 to 50 years. And it's only the truth sounds like the truth. And that means sometimes the truth isn't pleasant. And that you have to be able to communicate that, whatever is going on. And you can't fake it, right? If people smell it, and they see when you're not being truthful. They see when you're not being authentic and you're not vulnerable. And so you got to start with that premise for me, is you got to be willing to put it out there like it is. And that's, if your company's in trouble, tell them and ask for their help. If you're struggling, tell them and ask for your help, right? If if somebody else that's struggling, tell them and ask for the help. And that, to me, is the key. That's what makes it work. Because there's only one thing that makes it all work, and that's trust. And without truth, there is no trust.
Ooh. I'm like to say, preach, brother. I'm about to feel like I'm in church here right now. Woo! That is so true, Howard. I mean, that's 100% spot on. And I think that's the thing. People want to know that you trust them and that they can have a buy-in into helping make change. Right. And so when you come to them with that vulnerability and authenticity that says, I don't have all the answers, but together we could have all the answers. Let's talk about it together. Let's solve this problem together. Let's work together. And I'm telling you, there's so much energy, especially around engagement, when you are allowing somebody to really think about, how can I move the needle for our culture? How can I move the needle for our business? How can I be an active role and an active part in changing my community? And when people feel like they can have that buy-in and that power, it changes everything for them. It really does something to be able to do that.
I love it. I love the energy we got going. Doug, what do you think?
Well, I was just taking notes on Howard's quotes there. It was awesome. Right. So thank you. Look, I think it comes down to culture, not surprisingly, right? Those conversations are a lot easier to have when you have built in that trust. And, it doesn't mean they're easy conversations by any stretch, but, it's funny. I remember as I was listening to Law and Howard, I remember in my younger years hearing leaders say things like, well, they don't need to know that. We don't need to tell people that. And it always struck me as, why would we not provide all of the information and let people participate in the solutions? And I think that's the old sort of way of operating, that top down, like, we'll tell people what they need when they need it. And It doesn't engender a lot of trust and buy-in and truth. And so hopefully we've all moved beyond that sort of old approach.
Well, that old style of leadership, which again, you all will recognize me saying this, that I talk about thermostat cultures in this old ideology that the leader was the person that had to have all the answers. Right. And the person was like, the leader never shows that I got this. I don't have, and they project this image as if they do. That's that top of the pyramid style of leadership, which is, I'm supposed to be at the top and bark out orders and just tell everybody what to do. Right. But when we flip that pyramid upside down in our own minds and our own hearts, and then you all know me talking about this in terms of shaping cultures, is in the world we live in today, people participate in everything else in their life.
Right.
Like everywhere we go, when you go to Starbucks, when you go online, when you're in the chat function, the way we move throughout the world now is participatory. And yet, so why would we think inside our team and organization that we don't elicit people to participate?
Absolutely.
I'll give you a little story. So in 2007 and 2008, when the downturn came, right, leadership at Starbucks circled the wagons. Right. They pulled in and said, we know what to do. They were all, fear took over and we know what to do. and it totally broke trust with the organization. Now this time, in the struggle that we're having now with COVID and more significant downturn in business, they've done exactly the opposite. They've opened up their arms and asked the question, what should we do? And help people. And instead of layoffs, they didn't do that. Yeah, they had some layoffs because closed some stores, but it totally a different reaction and response. And it is made completely 10,000% difference.
Yes.
Trust is totally there, even in the downtimes right now.
And I just want to add one thing, because I totally agree. And this comes from the medical world, but we deal with this every day, where someone unfortunately is diagnosed with cancer and they want to get a second opinion. And they're nervous about asking their physician what they think. And years ago, somebody once told me this, I'll never forget it. They said, the internet is a great doctor's dream and a mediocre doctor's worst nightmare. Because the mediocre doctor wants to believe they have all the answers. And the great doctor wants you to go explore and learn and come with questions and say, sure, get a second opinion, because they're confident and secure in their approach. And it happens every single day. So it's leadership from a different field or a different sector. But no one should be forced to make decisions without being a participant in the dialogue and then the pursuit of information.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome, Doug. I love that.
I love that. Doug, quickly, would you share the thought? I love the thought that you shared with me before, this idea of we in the world right now, because you turn on the news, you're on social media for sure, which again, we live in a world which I think we're only now beginning to understand that the things that are being fed to us are coming based on things we've clicked on or other things. So it's just reinforcing what we already, and it's creating divisions to people. And it's also creating many of us to be skeptics. And you and I have had a great conversation, actually a story that you told me once that comes from Dan Rather, an interaction you had with Dan Rather years ago. But this idea of that all of us right now in the world are, and sometimes it creeps into our leadership, that our approach is more of a skeptic versus being skeptical versus cynical. And that we want to be skeptical. We want to ask good questions, but it's really easy for us to then become cynical and actually not have the best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. Will you say something quickly about that?
Yeah, so years ago, I'll make this quick, but I had the privilege of sitting next to Dan Rather on a flight. It was 3 hours, and we struck up this conversation. And I think at one point he thought I was working on my laptop, but I was actually taking notes on the entire conversation because what he was saying was so prescient. And what he said he was worried, and this was years ago, but he was worried that the media had become cynical. And he said, when I was trained as a journalist, I was trained to be skeptical. And he said, when you're skeptical, you ask questions because you want to understand. And when you're cynical, you ask questions because you think you already know the answer. And you're trying to sort of catch somebody in something. And he was very worried about that. And I think now, it's even more present in our society than ever. There's nothing wrong with asking hard questions and being skeptical, but we don't want to live in a world of cynicism. It's not a positive place to be, and you can't build a healthy culture that way.
Thank you. You just gave me something great to work with.
I'm telling you, me too, Howard. I'm taking notes in my brain because I'm going to write that down when I go back to my
ever since the first time, Doug, you and I talked about that, I wrote that on my giant dry erase board in my office. It's like, the idea, but I think it's tangible. And I can tell you from being in and out of many different teams and organizations over the years, but certainly in the last few months, we live in a world right now where it's easy to fall into that cynical thinking. Sure. And as a leader, if I think, again, what it means to lead, if my vision for leadership is top of the pyramid, I'm supposed to have all the answers, I'm supposed to be the Google that has all the answers, it's easy also for me to become cynical of everything else that I might not know or understand. And yet our workplaces are some of the most diverse places that many of us move in and out of. Yeah. Diverse in terms of background, diversity of thought, thankfully, diversity of all different kinds. And yet rather than falling into cynicism, we need to make sure that we as leaders are asking good questions. It's okay to be skeptical and say, let's ask a question that we actually want to go on the hunt to find a solution for. Yeah. But not to ask it just to be able to say, I got you.
Right. That's right.
How does that employee engagement right now? reaching out and engaging with people, how does any of this relate to that effort of keeping your employee base engaged?
Yeah, I think about this all the time. Like I laugh because my husband said, sometimes you have to turn it off, girl. And I'm like, I can't. I literally think about engagement all the time because I think about who I am as a worker, who I am as a leader, who I am as a community person, who I am as a citizen. I think about all the time, like what kind of things make me engage? What kind of things make me feel appreciated and supported and respected and valued? And then I want to know the same with you, and I want to know the same with you. And so I ask the questions because it's going to be different for everyone. And I'm excited it's going to be different for everyone because it's a nice challenge for us to be able to rise to the occasion.
Yep.
I feel like sometimes we need to put ourselves in a place where we can learn and next level ourselves as we're trying to help and next level other people. So I think about engagement from that perspective all the time. Like, I love the surprise and delight piece that Doug talked about. You know, it's like, how can I help this person? How can I help my community? How can I help my neighborhood? How can I help whatever with that next level piece by surprising, delighting them? Because in the whole spectrum of things, I can surprise and delight myself because there's things I don't know yet. There's things I haven't experienced yet. And I'm hopeful through all of those times that I'm engaging, I'm learning how to be better.
That's awesome. A question that's coming in, which is a great question, as we're talking about over communicating, we're talking about eliciting participation and listening and all that. But at the end of the day, and I know Howard and I have talked a lot about this, you know, it's also about, you know, we need to get results, which results not just money and results not just accomplishing tasks, but our performance matters.
Yes.
And oftentimes in our jobs, our performance does matter of how we show up and how we further the mission of whatever we do. A question that came in. So how do you prioritize listening and constant communication and participation at all levels when there's so much, quote unquote, work to get done? What are some tactical tips that will help us? You know, we can't just sit around and talk all day. We've got to actually get some stuff done, and our performance does what matter, but what's the balance there? I've got my thoughts, but I'm interested in yours.
Yeah, I would say it's not about balance. It's about integration. It's this is not a conflict. This is, excuse my expression, this is a fake conflict, right? There is no conflict between listening, good communication, participation, and getting the job done. It's like, you know, that that servant leadership interferes with profits. It's not true, right? We can do both. We can sing and dance at the same time. I'd ask the question back. If you're in a family situation with a significant other, you've got work to get done. The garbage has to go out. You got to put the bread on the table. You got to do all that stuff. But does that mean that you can't still have good communication with your significant other or spouse? No. It's while you're doing your work, you're having communication. Right? Communication doesn't always mean talking. We're not pleading for anarchy here. Right. What we're really talking about is just living a life of integration. So communication is going on while you're working, and working is going on while you're communicating. They're not opposites of each other.
So when's the book coming out? Because I mean, you got the gems on. You are like just rolling with the gems. Love it.
Yeah.
Doug, what's your thought on any of this, or what would your answer to that question? Like, how do we? And again, I agree with you, Howard. It's not about balancing it. And again, you and I are very aligned in this. Anytime people talk about servant leadership or culture being an add-on, I come out of my seat and say, because the best teams and organizations, the culture they create and how they're committed to communicate and participating with each other creates better results. And so it's not an add-on. It's an ecosystem that you either believe in or you don't believe in. And so, Doug, does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. And I agree with Howard. I mean, I think we're sort of trained to believe that there's this choice, right, between doing something that is sort of internal communications versus doing something maybe productive for the organization or the company. And that's a false choice. And, you know, I'll tell you, I mean, I spent an hour this morning with our team on a Zoom call talking about a number of things related to diversity and inclusion. It was an incredible hour. I did not feel like I was missing anything. I did not feel like I was behind on my work. I did not feel like I was sort of had to be there. And, you know, the one thing, and this is just a tangible example, but the one thing I do every week, which takes more time than anything else I do on a weekly basis, is send an email that goes out every week to our team and our board and some of our partners. And it's the only reason I do it is because I just don't want anyone to say I didn't know what was going on. I don't want anyone to say, gosh, I didn't know that was happening. I didn't know what the priority for the week was. But that's the one thing that takes the most time each week. But I love it. And it's an essential part of who we are as an organization. And so I don't see it as, a task or a chore or something that I have to go get done instead of something else. It's part of why we do what we do.
Here's one of my favorite quotes, I think, that supports exactly what you're saying, is think like a person of action, act like a person of thought. And putting those two things together, that makes it work.
Howard, I'm telling you, man, write the book. I got these gems that's coming everywhere. I love it.
I've already written my book. Yeah. Jason's going to write more books.
Yes.
Howard's got amazing books out there, and I think you got another one in you, buddy.
I think so too.
Yeah. Okay, you can write it for me.
You got it. We'll get cranking, buddy. I'm wondering if I know we've got a couple of minutes in this segment. I'm wondering if there are other questions out there, that are coming in. One of the great, as I said earlier, one of the great pleasures of this is you all haven't known. I know some of you know each other, but you're trusting in me that we're going to put this collection of humans together and just have a conversation that is the currency for change. It is a pleasure to just connect and be with you and to listen and watch you guys talking about this. All of it is about saying, what are the values that we want to hold out in front of us? Yes. And are we going to be intentional about setting that temperature? And I'll just say, as somebody who loves you all, and Howard is somebody who has encouraged me and shown, he was celebrated and talked about the fact that in business, we should say the word love more.
Yes.
And a lot of people were saying, it feels a little strange. But the reality is we need to love people. And I love the work that you all are doing in the world and the fact that you've joined your voices to be a part of the spirit of this kind of leadership and culture. So I want to thank you guys for being a part of this today.
Thank you.
This is for sure. I mean, I've known Doug for many, many years, but I'm just loving Howard so much right now. I'm like, we're going to be friends for a long time. I mean, I think we definitely need a whole lot more love for sure, but I'm honored to be with all of you. And I've learned some things today. So I definitely hope that all of our participants have learned some stuff already. And this is just more to come. Great.
All right. So while we've got great people, I'm going to throw Jacob a curveball here. We're going to track somebody down that I think is out in the audience and invite them to come join us on stage for the last couple of minutes. I believe is out there. But if we can find Greg Oden, I believe is out there in the virtual platform. One of our speakers from last year who was a part of this, Gio, I believe is out there. And in the spirit of just grabbing great people and throwing them together, Gio!
How you doing?
Very good.
Hi.
How you doing, man?
I'm glad you did this because I just sat back down from getting the water about 20 seconds ago and was not expecting that. But I'm happy to be here.
You put pants on, you got clothes on, everything's good, right?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Gio, real quick, you were an amazing voice at last year's Thermostat Cultures Live in person that we did, and you shared your story, your journey of tremendous success. Again, only one of 73 humans on the planet that have ever been drafted number one for the NBA. I mean, that's an amazing thing in and of itself. At the pinnacle of your career at age 19, the top of the mountain, and yet you were really honest about the downfalls, things that were out of your control in terms of injury, and then things that choices you made that didn't bring out the best in you, and yet your journey to kind of set a different temperature and then hold values out in front of you. I'm wondering, because you and I obviously have been close and connected during these times during the pandemic and everything. Say something about having clarity around what you're aiming for and the temperature you're trying to set and how that's helped you navigate your way through times of uncertainty.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and everybody else. It's a pleasure to meet you guys and listen to you all. I've been writing down a lot of stuff. So thank you. And Jason, working with you, honestly, it's been amazing. It was you, it was Coach Mata, it was my wife, it was my daughter. It was everything that I wanted to be great for. And talking with you about that thermostat culture, setting the temperature of what I wanted my life to look like. At one point, I had no direction. And as you said, align yourself with what you want. And I had to sit back and realize that if what I want in my life for my family and myself, I have to do the work to go that direction. I had to set the temperature for what I want. So, a lot of things, I had to sit back. I couldn't, just spend money. I couldn't just not do any work. I couldn't go out and network with people for the things that I wanted to do in my life, for the people that I wanted to help. I had to actually go to camps. I had to actually sit down and talk to people, had to actually work on myself, talk to a therapist, figure out what I needed to do to get my mind right to achieve the goals that I wanted in life. And I thank you all for that. And, right now I want to be a basketball coach. So all of this talk about leadership and, the big one that I wrote down was, that top of the pyramid leadership that you just talked about. And I was like, I never heard it that way. But, the flip side, turning that around, you want, everybody with you to, hold on, let me see what I write down. Every other aspect of life, everybody's participating. When you say every other aspect of life, everybody participates. So why not in a leadership position? Why everybody's adding to get to where you want to go, that one goal. And I'm definitely going to use that in my life and making the mission. When I get a team that I'm going to be a coach of, I want to make sure that everybody's adding in. And I want to make sure that we're all going back to that mission to refocus ourselves, to that goal. So I thank you all for all of those gems that I'm going to put in place in my life.
Thank you, Greg.
Gio, always great to see you. Glad you're here and glad you're participating. That's awesome. I mean, a past speaker and all that in the room, participating with everybody. Anyone out there who's a part of this and in the virtual space, hopefully you'll leave some great things in the chat box. But what an amazing gift it is to just be connected to the people that are a part of this, and all of us together, again, naming time that authentic leadership and shaping culture is as important as ever in the world today. And so, again, I thank you all for being a part of this and joining me in this effort. I could do this all day. I could talk with you all day, but we're gonna keep things moving because I know we're gonna be respectful of everybody's time. We're coming up. We're going to take a 10-minute break, which you'll see a timer that's going to show up on the screen and count down from 10. This is an opportunity for you to have a little quiet reflection based off of what we just talked about and thinking about what is the temperature you've been setting as a leader, and what is the temperature maybe that your team needs of you. A little quiet reflection for that, but also a time to go to the bathroom, talk with the table if you want to do that. I know some teams are grabbing food at this point and having a snack kind of together. So we're going to do a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back and continue with Thermostat Cultures Live. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using. And share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to your organization, or you have a question or comment about this podcast, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.